Hi class, Professor Barry Brennan, where I'm back here talking about research in the small group, and we're going to get straight into talking about fallacies. So let's get there. We left off talking about um, opinion versus fact. I think it's going to take us back to the fallacies. Okay, fallacies to be mindful of. Fallacies are everywhere. People don't even recognize them as fallacies. How are we going to know that they're fallacies? Well, one common one is what's called binary thinking, or the either or fallacy, or the black-white fallacy. It's called by different names, but the idea is there's only two options, right? If that, oftentimes you're going to hear this in political discussion a lot. Either this is going to happen or this is going to happen. The truth is, in anything in life, there are many options. And it is a fallacy. Now, there are sometimes, or it could be a little bit of both is going to happen. But oftentimes that is presented as either you're going to go down this path or that. There's only two paths. And if we know anything about life, there's always more than two, right? There's always more than two. We live in a world where it's like we think of life and death. Well, those probably are the only two like extreme options. But other than that, it's a fallacy to think that something's either or when it's presented that way, when you know that there are other options, okay? Hasty generalization, also like an overgeneralization. I think that's what your book calls it. It's arriving at some generalization about something before you have all the facts. It's that simple. You know, how do you hear that? You can hear that in writing. Sometimes you hear that or you'll read that in an article in a newspaper. They make a hasty generalization about something. You hear politicians do it all the time. You hear, news pundits do it. They make these generalizations, hasty generalization based upon one fact. Oftentimes, it's like the way stereotypes are made. It's a hasty generalization. Right? One person does something and you've decided all people do that. That's an example of a hasty generalization. Fallacy. Ad hominem argument. Ad hominem means they're attacking the person rather than what the person has done, right? Or what the policy that they made. I was recently watching something Gavin Newsom rolled out. I didn't hear all of it, but I believe that he rolled out a plan for, I don't know how many years from now, 30 years from now, maybe less than that, of making California completely green, like no gasoline, no fossil fuels, making all of our cars electric. I personally think it's a great idea, especially for you all young people that are going to be impacted by what's happening to our climate as a result of lack of, what's the word I want? Lack of responsible thinking, forward thinking by people before me, right? And it is what it is, but he's trying to address that. Well, as I was watching that on my phone, all kinds of like attacks. People were attacking him that weren't even related to the policy, right? That's an ad hominem attack, trying to make it about him and his character and any of these other things. Okay. Our current president has ad hominem attacks at him all the time. Okay. Slippery slope. Slippery slope means it's the argument that if this happens, I like to say, then all hell is going to break loose. It's the idea of, that's actually, I'm getting this from a video that I watched, that if we computerize or make robots, then pretty soon robots are going to take over the world and AI is going to control us. Or there'll be no jobs for anyone if we start doing, like at the grocery store, you have the self-checkout, right? I appreciate that because sometimes I don't want to wait in line, right? And I can just figure it out myself and then I can get out of there. Is it taking jobs away from people? I don't know. Is it? I'm not sure. Maybe they'll have different jobs, right? So that's kind of a slippery slope argument. Like, well, if we do this, it's going to take jobs. Like, maybe not. Maybe they'll have different jobs. Maybe they'll have jobs where they'll be more, feel like they can use more of their brain power instead of just sitting at a cashier and standing all day. That they can do more than something that's a repetitive task. They can be more creative. So that's a slippery slope means if this happens, then a whole bunch of terrible things going to happen. Okay. Causal fallacy. This is the last fallacy that I'm going to talk about. And there's a lot more, but just things for you to consider that you'll hear or you might read as you're doing your research. Causal fallacy is this idea that because two events happen at the same time, they're related. Now, I was trying to think of one. I didn't want to take one from the book. I was trying to think of one on my own that I hear, like, let's just say, and I'm not sure, and I don't know if this is true or not, but let's just say like earthquake weather. You know how they always say that it's earthquake weather, but no earthquake happens? I think that's kind of a causal fallacy. Now, don't quote me on this because I would have to look it up in geography, but what does that even mean, right? Is there like tsunami weather or is there earthquake weather? It's just something that people say. They associate it being hot with an earthquake happening. Now, I can tell you, I was in the earthquake in San Francisco, and that was in October, in the middle of October, and it was not hot on that day. So were we having earthquake weather? I don't think so. And I was in the big earthquake that was almost a 7, or it was almost an 8, I think. So that was years and years and years ago before you guys were born. But I don't know. Causal fallacy is two events happening and trying to draw a relationship between them. Okay? That can be if there is no relationship. Now, sometimes there is a relationship, but if there is no relationship, they're two unlike things, and saying, is there a relationship or not a relationship? Okay. Next. Sample credible sources. I kind of already talked about this a little bit, but here's some examples. New York Times, LA Times. Just realize the point of view that they're coming from as you're looking at this stuff. NPR, pretty good at saying exactly what the facts are. BBC, also very good at stating the facts. In fact, BBC is probably a little more conservative than NPR. But they don't have any, and this is where you're going to find like global stuff. If one of your issues is a global issue like climate crisis, then BBC is a good reference point in terms of just data about in general. They're going to say it just like it is. Okay, peer-reviewed articles, we talked about that already. And anything .gov and .edu is fairly trustworthy. Okay, fairly trustworthy. I honestly feel like in today's world that we live in, there's so much information is manipulated that that's all I'm going to say about that. So I'm going to say that .gov and .edu is fairly trustworthy. What you don't want are things that are like .com, I don't think. You don't want .org. Unless, of course, it's a website that's related specifically to what you're looking for. Okay? Like, for example, environment stuff. Defenders of Wildlife. I think it's a .org, actually. I think .org is fine. That's a organization that works on behalf of conserving and preserving wildlife in wild spaces, and they do a lot of work. So that's it's a legit site. If let's say you're looking at the rise of cancer in the valley, and you went to the Mayo Clinic, that's a legit site, and I don't know, that's a .org or a .com. So it's like these aren't hard and fast rules. They're just general rules to guide you in your research. Okay, there's no like hard and fast for sure. I can tell you Wikipedia is not a legitimate or reliable source for obvious reasons that you all know. So Wikipedia is out. But if you follow these general guidelines, it should help you a lot. All right, we're almost done with this. Expert testimony. Some of you are going to want to talk to someone or get testimony from someone. The questions you want to ask is, does the testimony or the testimony that you're hearing, like let's say you're watching a YouTube video or an interview with someone or something on ABC 30 or whatever it is, and you want to, are they using facts? Is it opinion or facts? Are they speaking from direct experience? There's that. Do they have observational capacity? Another thing you have to ask yourself. Has the evidence been documented and is it relevant? Right? Can you follow up with the stuff that they're saying? Are they just making it up? Is it just their opinion? Is the testimony from a recent event? It's something that they just had direct experience with. Does it match the testimony of others? All of these things I've already given you, like recency. Does it match other people's ideas? This is similar, kind of redundant of what I've already been talking about, but things you do want to ask yourself when you're hearing the testimony of people. Okay, interview checklists. I want to encourage you to do this. Okay, those of you might want to interview experts in the field. Right? Ask some questions. I would do it. You guys are like I said, you're neophyte scholars. Go for it. Go and ask people who have knowledge, have written in the field, or written about your topics in the field and know this. Ask some questions. So one way to do, not one way, but the way to go about doing this is, one, when you make contact with a person, contact them by email and by phone. When you do that, offer at least 3 different times in which you can get together to communicate and have options, right? If you want to communicate by Zoom or communicate by, maybe they only have time to communicate you with email. If you do that, make sure that you're allowed to quote them, which leads me to the other kind of part of this is let them know what kind of questions you want to ask. If it's only going to by email, so you let them know about the questions so they have time to think about what it is you're going to ask. Got it? Then when you meet, whether it's by Zoom or whether you meet social distancing or on the phone, ask them if you're allowed to record. If you only meet them through email, like you ask them the questions, they email back to you answers, ask them if you can quote them. Okay? You have to ask for permission. You don't just do it, you ask for permission. Okay, that's the right way to do it. Also, you want to, when you get to that point, you have to prepare your questions ahead of time. Don't just wait and do it on the fly. That's rude and unprofessional. If you want to be accepted as a professional person, you will take the time to conduct yourself as a professional and have your questions ready. Okay, here are the questions that you should think of. They should not be too general or too specific. Too specific limits the scope of which they can respond. Too general is not going to give you enough meat. Create questions that allow for an extended response, not a yes or no answer. Okay? Record and document the date and time of the interview. That is going to have to go into your bibliography and into as you cite your sources. Okay? And then when all this is done, make sure you thank the person. Don't forget to do that. Okay? Super, super important. You're building relationships with people out in the community right now through this project. So how you conduct yourself is going to make a difference. And you never know where this might lead to a future career for you or future career aspects or opportunities. You just never know. So remember that as you do this. And I really encourage you to go out in the community. That's what the community is for, to help us learn more. Okay. This is the last thing I'm going to say is don't forget to keep track of everything. Write it down. Put it on your laptop. Record it. But keep track of it. You're going to be doing a lot of research. You don't want to be redundant with your group members. So be able to keep track of it so you can share it. And share it with your group members. If you find something that's related to what they're looking at, know what they're looking at, and so you can help each other. That's it. I know you guys are going to be awesome. I will see you soon.